It is now.
Okay, so this is where I give a kiss to Shiri. Shiri, where you been, man? I haven't spoken to you in so many days, man.
I'm here.
Hey,
Looking
Shiri.
good, looking good. So I've started the Enneagram, right? Now, I think, I'm not going to name the person now that we are recording, right? But, but I know somebody who is all about helping, okay? And basic need is appreciation, right? And when, this is what I've learned, I don't know if it's true, of course, Shiri will be able to tell more. When they get into helping, and it's always, they want to help a little bit more than you help, right? And when they don't feel that need is met, they go into anger. This is the stressful situation. And then when they do feel that, you know, they're happy and resourceful, they go into more and more helping. So it's very interesting because I'm guessing the whole point of all this is if you're able to find out what type that person is, you will in your team be able to say, okay, this person I know is going to get angry, right? So, or I know is going to be resourceful. So when I need some help, I'll ask this person. You catch what I'm trying to say? So, and here's a question for Shiri. Shiri, do you think Nick is a 4?
Difficult to say, Manoj, because fours classically in their, let's say, normal state are very creative people, right? Very creative people. And, but, you know, let's say, and before I answer that first, so Nick, just for your information.
Shiri,
You know, Enneagram is very deep and comprehensive. And so when you look at each of the types, no, I just got a message that my connection was unstable. So I'll just repeat. Right. I'll just repeat. So what I was saying was that, you know, before I answer Manoj's question, I need to share the following for you, Nick. So when you look at an Enneagram, there are 9 types, and it's very comprehensive. It's very deep, and also it's also quite vast, if I could say. And it also has a spiritual basis to its evolution and development. Over these 100 years.
He's breaking up again, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at each of these types, there are 9 layers of its, let's say, program. I'll just keep the door open a bit. Am I better now?
Yeah, you came in and went like a Dalek.
Okay. So I'll try and repeat again. So I was saying that, you know, each of the types have, you know, 9 layers of, let's say, progression from, you know, the worst state to the best state possible in terms of development. And what also happens is there are something called as wings. So which means it takes on the characteristics of the types that are adjacent to it. Right? And also, like Manoj was saying, there is, you know, in a resourceful state, in a positive state, you know, one type will go and take on the positive characteristics of another type. And in a stressful state, it will go and take the negative characteristics of another state. So Manoj was asking me about type 4. So type 4s are very creative people, you know, very creative. But in their, let's say, lower moods, they can go into melancholy. You know, very low melancholic mood and things like that. And then they can also become very unpredictable if you look at it in that sense. Steve Jobs was a classic type 4. You know, yeah.
The reason I asked you is because Julia said one thing the other day. Nick, Julia is the trainer, right, of the course. Yeah. And she said that type 4s go very deep into meaning, right? They really go deep into finding what is the meaning of this, what is the purpose of this, etc., etc. And she said one thing. She said, you know, if they're great coaches, and if they're, you know, they will always try to find the deeper meaning in the coaching, right? And it just struck my mind because I know from the sessions I have with Nick, he always tries to go very, you know, very deep into the reason behind the reason behind the reason behind. That's the reason why. But yet, he's always a smiling face, so I don't see him as a melancholic. I know he used
Hey, look,
to
no,
be, but
look,
he's not anymore.
no, look, I think this is the place to be honest and true. So I have moments of melancholy. I don't know what the true meaning of that word is. So I would say I get down moments where I give, especially if, I'm giving too much energy away to other people and I get zapped, and then I get a bit slow, and then I'm always in that, I think that awakened consciousness, the I am consciousness, but I'm not perfect. So I wish I was, but I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. So that's what I'm here to do.
Yeah. In fact, just last night I was sharing this very line, Nick, to somebody who had reached out to me, for a question that she was struggling with.
Mm.
So I shared this very line. So though I told her that I don't remember who said these lines, but I first came across this line in a book called The Power of Spiritual Intelligence by Tony Robbins. So it's this very quote with which he opens that book.
Mm.
So it's a nice coincidence, you mentioning
I
the
don't
same
know.
line
I don't
today.
know. I don't know who that is, but yeah, I think, yeah, but I think creatives, this is just my opinion, I suppose, is creative people. It's a bit like comics, isn't it? Comedians are, they're the most, when they're in that comic state, they're the most hilarious beings, yet when they separate from that comic state, they also have dark states, and suffer with depression and anger and all those other things. And so I think creative people I can see why a true creative person would be like that. So it's those things are interesting, man. I'd love to know more about it. Maybe you can do a test on me and you can see what it is.
But yet what you said actually makes true, right? Because it's like you cannot have good without having evil. You cannot have a hilarious guy without having the other extreme, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's I don't know, for me, it's hard to explain it now in English, but it's like, Ashri, help me out here. So you got Rajas, Tamas, and
Shiri's learning Spanish,
Sattvic.
by the way.
And Sattvic, right? So,
Yeah, Sattvic, yeah.
So there's all these different things in motion, these different energies in motion all the time. And this is just I truly believe this. Because I have been that positive, energetic, on point person, like I've been that person before, for about 2 or 3 years, and you do that, and you the energy has to go somewhere, right? Because it's circling all the time. And yes, you can be like that, but I think you have to be really in tune with that energy to know when it's coming, to stop that melancholy or that or that sadness or that negativity or whatever it is, right? Because and if you think about the way the mind is constructed, right? The mind is effectively, the mood is yes, it's hormonal, right? So it's like, all those endorphins and all that high energy, dopamine, right? So that gives you that high, doesn't it? But effectively it has to come down and settle. And sometimes if you're in that energy giving state and you're in that high and the dopamine and everything's flying and you're on point, at some point you got to come down, I think.
It's interesting you mentioned that, Nick, because since we last met a month ago, I've been on some experiments, and I think over the last 3-4 days, especially during my morning walks, one of the mudras that I've been practicing is called the Rudra Mudra.
Yeah.
Which is all about stabilizing your solar plexus and all the emotions that kind of come up there. So, and today, in fact, for full 45 minutes that I was walking, I was not doing any of the mudra, but just this. Because I felt the need to kind of focus more on that there. But it's interesting, Manoj, I must say this, how even though we start with no agenda, but I think the question that comes up from one of us each time would invariably be touching upon something that's kind of commonly going on everywhere, or something where all three of us have some reason or the other to connect or resonate with or contribute to.
And you know, and I don't know about you, Manoj. Okay, this is just my experience. You know, having gone through that, I was thinking about this the other day, actually. You know, having gone through my whole personal development, like Tony Robbins, UPW Wealth Mastery, or the UPW 3 times, and then, you know, The Secret, Manoj, and obviously One Coach, and we run all these things. And yeah, you know, I love that personal development stuff. I really do. And I wouldn't be the man I am today without having done that. Yet it creates energy, so energy and motion, right? And it does allow you to move forward. But I believe this is just through NLP and my spiritual work. I believe you can learn to embrace that state and manage that state. You know, because I look, and I'm happy to share it, right? I've suffered with depression. I've suffered with, you know, anxiety, obesity, food eating, even on that journey, because NLP, in my experience, can give you the tools to manage that state, right? So you don't get that, you know, high and low, because I now think it's better to just be here, but confident and clear on where you're going, without having to have all that hype. What are your thoughts, Manoj?
I agree with you. I just unsure whether that can be actually accomplished in a lifetime. You know, I think we're all here to, you know, we all have to go ups and downs. And I think the mission is really to be able to manage that, so that the ups and downs are less, right? Can it be managed to a flat level? I don't know. I have that question.
I don't mean a flat level. What I mean is, it's like, you know, I see if I can muster up some of the old memory banks. It'd be like, hey, Manoj, you know, how you doing, man? Let's just do something, and it's going to be great. And fuck, we're going to just create all this energy and this motion and this creativity, and we're going to come out with this plan, right? And we're going to be millionaires, or we're going to do this. I mean, that sort of energy, as it, you know, creating that energy, even just doing that now, I can feel that it's a big shift, right? And I don't believe, unless you're naturally that way inclined, you can run like that. And I don't mean just being flat, but I mean you can channel into your true energy, and you know, share words with energy and meaning behind them without that hype.
Yet there are people who constantly have that energy.
Yeah, no, and that's great. That's what I said.
Right.
If you have that naturally, awesome.
Correct. Yeah.
Awesome. But I suppose for me, it's like, you know, I, anyway, through my experience, modeled that and was trying to be that, you know. And I thought about this guy this morning in my meditation. One of my early mentors, he's a multi-millionaire, right? And he's the most amazing man I've ever met, and I owe him my life, because he gave me an opportunity to break into sales, right? And he was always like on point energy, and I was just like, you know, he's like that naturally. And what I mean is, I think you have to find what's right for you.
I agree.
You know, so that is, and we're always going to get those ups and downs and those ebbs and flows.
And that's probably the problem, that everybody keeps on comparing, like, hey, you know, I got to be like this guy. I got to know.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
You have the energy. You just have to find your own style.
Exactly. And it's like through my spiritual work, it's like, you know, all the teachings, if you go into the Vedanta and the Veda teachings and the Upanishads, it's like, you know, the rishis said thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, you have an energy and a power inside of you, right, which knows no limits. But I think, you know, as a younger man, I wanted to imitate those high energy people without really appreciating that I have my own energy, and with my own energy comes my meaning, my creativity. You know, like Shri, you said about Steve Jobs, you know, whatever a four means, but you know, look what he did with his energy, and he still had moments of melancholy or whatever he had, emotional lows, And I just think it's better to be yourself than to mimic somebody else.
I would agree with that. And in fact, what you both have been talking reminded me of a few things that I'd like to share here. So for one, there's a very interesting element of strengths psychology, Donald Clifton's strengths psychology that I could sense here. So to give a cricketing example, I kind of keep going back to this often. So I don't know, Manoj, how much you follow cricket, and especially Indian cricketers.
When India and Pakistan play, that's it.
Okay, so I guess you would have heard of players like Rahul Dravid and Virat Kohli and all of that, the current captain. So what happened is, Rahul Dravid is currently the coach of the India under-19 team, which is what is kind of building up and making the bench strength for the India seniors. And he was once asked a question about, what is his take on Virat Kohli's style of captaining? Very, very energetic, very passionate, in your face, very aggressive, very focused, very driven, and keeps coming back at you and at you and at you and at you and all that stuff. So, he said something very interesting, which is what you guys have been talking about. He said, it works for Virat because that's what his natural style is. The pressure and the aggression bring out the best in him. Good luck. But my concern is something else. He said, when I work with these under-19s, for a lot of these kids, Virat is their role model. And I have to keep working with them to tell them that, for Virat, that aggression and that passion and, on his sleeve is his natural self. He's able to handle that energy. But when you try and mimic Virat unnecessarily, you're going to damage yourself. So just be your natural self. Identify what your natural self is, what your natural talents are all about, and work to it. That's something, what he said, and I remembered. The other thing I remembered was, I don't know about in Spain and let's say England or Australia, but I would like to believe that, in your childhood, you would have come across this toy. Because I used to see this toy in my childhood in the shops here. So it's like, some kind of a clown, but more shaped in the form of a penguin, and it would have a big inflated nose here. So it's like a, air-filled balloon kind of a stuff. And in the nose here, it would have written the words called punch me or hit me here. And the interesting thing was each time you go and hit the doll or that plaything, it would go like this and then immediately come back. And as children, we used to wonder, what is this all about? I never got to buy that toy. It was kind of quite tall, about 4.5, 5 feet or something. And then later on, as I was studying science, I understood what was really happening. So they had, this huge, heavy metallic disc plate, which was there at the bottom. So what happens is the moment you punch the doll, it kind of goes there, but the metallic ball disc kind of brings it back to its original centered, balanced shape. And this is something I learned from one of my mentors. And he said, life is going to come and keep punching you out of your balance many times. But the question is, how quickly are you able to kind of come back to that state of centeredness? And, and for that, mindfulness is needed. So I would agree with what you both said, that it's not about being flat, because I personally, I'm also a very passionate kind of a person. Because in my natural full flow, when I'm conducting sessions, it's full passion that comes on. So, but what I heard Nick say is that, what we're trying to manage is the degree of fluctuation. So instead of having these steep highs and these, dark lows and going like this, which is very fluctuating, what you're looking at, is more or less maybe a steady sine wave, where you're more in balance rather than being out of balance. That's what I heard.
Yeah, and I Sri, that's totally what I heard. Now you've spoken back to me, because I think that is it, and I wrote down here, and this is something that I train and coach, and I'm very passionate about it as a trainer and coach, is the law of requisite variety, and I train that in businesses and to individuals, and I think if we embrace that presupposition, or the person, the way I train it is the person with the most degree of behavioral flexibility has control of the situation, right? So, and I think it's that degree of flexibility. I mean, when I coach and I train, I can go naturally to that high energy, but it's having the flexibility to not do that as well if I want to.
Yeah.
Where,
Yeah. And interestingly, I'm going to name a gentleman here who gave me a very interesting metaphor for this coming back to the center, coming back to the balance. So he's a gentleman who lives in Delhi. His name is Vineet Taneja, ex-IIT Delhi, then ex-IIM Calcutta, and then worked with the choicest of the companies, Gillette and then Airtel. He was the CEO of one of the divisions in Airtel, if I remember correctly. And now he's kind of retired and he's into coaching and consulting, etc. And I used to go to him with my questions. And one day he gave me a very interesting metaphor. He said, Shri, have you noticed what's the difference between a normal badminton player and a champion badminton player? Now, I used to love playing badminton as a kid, but I couldn't get my head around it. And then he eventually helped me understand that, the difference is that a champion badminton player, after returning a shot, no matter from which side of the other court it came, after returning the shot will do something invariably. Guess what?
Come back to the middle, right?
Come back to the middle. Because from that middle, it's equidistant for him to go to any other corner of his court and take the shot which the opponent is going to throw back at him, whether it's a drop shot or a cross-court volley or whatever it is. That day, that metaphor stuck in me. And for me, since then, the practice has been about how often can I practice mindfulness to kind of keep knowing where am I off court or off the center or off the balance as with that toy, and how often, and doesn't matter how long it takes, but how often do I stick with the practice of getting back to my center, which is where, as I was saying in the beginning, the last few days especially have been about practicing more of the the Rudra Mudra, which is all about centeredness and kind of coming back, getting your emotions back into center. And it's that mindfulness and that habit that you build over a period of time, which then takes its own life and helps.
So you're trying to say that last 4, 5, 6 days, whatever, you notice you have been decentered, if you can use that word, and then you've been doing the mudras to go back to the center.
Yeah, the mudra as well as the the Ho'oponopono prayer, both. I would say both, and also the Jinshin Jitsu that we spoke about last time. So nowadays I get up at 4 a.m. in the morning, and the first thing I do is I do half an hour of Jinshin Jitsu, which is primarily to balance my internal body organs, and also with that the level of breathing and the emotions, and then I go for my walk. So between 45 minutes to 1 hour, I'd be practicing 3 different mudras. But today, especially, I focus more on the Rudra Mudra because I knew from my biofeedback mechanism that that's what I need to practice more for today.
And Shri, I'm curious for anyone who listens to this. So you get up at 4 a.m. to do that every day. What time do you go to bed?
So latest I I'm asleep is 10 p.m. Yep. But I try and go to bed by 9 p.m. so that I get a good 7-hour block, so to speak.
Yeah, because I'm the same. So I get up at 4:45, 5 o'clock, but I'm normally, like you, I'm in bed by aim for 9:30, so I get that 7 hours. And I only say
I'm
that.
the lazy one. I'm the lazy one here. I wake up at 6, man.
Yeah, but it depends what's right for you, doesn't it? It's like I this is just my belief is my meditation and my practice is worth more than sleep. So I would rather be tired and do my practice rather than have it the other way around.
It's interesting you mention it that way, Nick. For me, it's been a slightly different take. For me, it didn't start off that way. I first realized that there was, if I could put words, and it's totally personal as case, somebody else may have a different experience and they may disagree. But what I realized first before I kind of get into any routine was to accept that there was probably a lack of or a baggage of lack of, let's say, physical rest that my body needed, mental rest which comes through sleep. So I first settled that routine. So from the beginning of the lockdown, I would say I focused more on getting my 8 hours there, so that my body and mind, etc., begin to settle down. And then what happened is, as I then started getting into these practices with Jinshin Jitsu, or then initially Surya Namaskar exercises, and then as the lockdown eased and I started going for my walks and the mudras, what I realized is, Manoj, for me, anywhere between 6 to 7 hours is good enough. And the rest of the day, I don't feel sleepy or tired or anything, because it's now getting more and more synchronized, more and more balanced is how I would put it. So I first had to kind of take care of the baggage or the kind of, whatever the lack of it. And then as it settled, the other things started synergizing and harmonizing.
No, I agree with you. I also do. I mean, I sleep at 10 also, but I need 8 hours.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Otherwise, I know people who I'm talking 60-year-olds, who sleep 4 hours and a half, 5, and they have a hell of a lot more energy than me or many people I know. I don't know how they do it. I guess every person is different, So
No, my if I could hazard a guess here, Manoj, because I've seen some people like that, and I've seen, their patterns of behavior. I've observed them for a long period of time, and I would say I would not be surprised if these are people who are naturally blessed with a very strong root chakra, or the Muladhara chakra,
Mm.
which is where your which is the storehouse of your body energy, so to speak, your determination, your passion, and everything. I would not be surprised if they're naturally blessed with that area.
maybe.
Hey, and one thing came to mind is talking about mindfulness, and I remember like Wayne Dyer was a big influence on my spiritual journey, and was a huge impact. But I remember these stories he used to say, and he used to say he'd get like he'd be worrying about something, he'd have something on his mind, and he used to ring Deepak Chopra apparently and say, "Oh, Deepak, I've got this problem. What should I do?" And apparently Deepak Chopra used to just turn and go meditate. And he'd be like, "Yeah, but no, I've got this really big problem." And Deepak Chopra would say, "No, just meditate." So that's what he did. And I think whatever meditation you do, whatever practice you do, that definitely helps with that. That's being centered all the time, and not being able to control your emotions because you diffuse them before they even arise generally.
Yes, sir.
I love it when you smile like that.
I was just waiting to see who would speak first.
Same here, same here, same here, Manoj. And I didn't want to be the one that breaks this beautiful silence that
I know.
all of us had experienced.
I knew it was going to be Nick. I really knew it was going to be Nick. I mean, no, because he just can't stop seeing my face. He just always smiles.
Oh, very true, very true. But it is though, isn't it? It's like, and I think so many people, I've been watching, we've been doing quite a lot of research on exhaustion. There was this documentary come around on exhaustion, and they were saying about, obviously it's an American documentary. It's really good, actually. It was a 9-part documentary, but it was saying that so many people in the Western world now push themselves through to a limit through stimulants, through caffeine, through these energy drinks, through sugary foods, and they do that just to perform at this high level that they need to get to in order to do their job or their business or whatever they do. And over time, it's like that. All those stimulants cause an imbalance. It could be an imbalance of the adrenals. It could be, an imbalance of the hormones around the thyroid or the liver or whatever it might be. But they did say that mindfulness meditation and whatever that is, right? That could be going to the gym. I know some people who go into the gym. If they don't go to the gym, that's their way of centering themselves to keep themselves on point. So I don't mean we all have to sit there and close our eyes and meditate or use a mudra or a mantra or whatever, but there's ways of doing that, and I think it's really important, because whether we're pushing ourselves from an emotional energy or we're pushing ourselves from a false energy, like having 4 or 5 cups of coffee a day, or I walk past, and it's interesting, you observe, right? Your reticular activation system is amazing once it's programmed, because I watched this and I was walking around Brisbane doing some client meetings, and I saw people sat down and they were drinking like cans of Red Bull, smoking a cigarette. One guy I saw with a can of Red Bull, a cup of coffee, and a cigarette. And I was like, imagine what that's doing to their whole energy cycle within their body. So I don't think it's necessarily that having that high energy, but it can be through stimulants, anything false that you put through the body, or you try to create the body, needs to be come back to center to to connect with yourself and to be yourself.
It's true what you're saying about the meditation. Actually, the other day I was having the same conversation with my sister. And I was telling her, you got to, and again, this ties back to what we've been talking about, finding your own style. So I was telling her, hey, I put myself audio of water with my affirmations. That's what works for me. Maybe for you, I don't know, just seeing a mandala, that's what works for you. I mean, the thing is, I think everybody's got the misconception in the whole world that meditation is only sitting in a yoga position.
Yeah,
and
lotus
doing
position, like whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how many people, I mean, I personally, I cannot sit in a yoga position for more than 5 minutes. You know, I've never also it's true, I haven't really put an effort into it. But what works for me, I just stick to it, right? But there's many people who have that, misconception. And I think they run away from the word meditation because they think it's sitting on your ass for 30 minutes, in an uncomfortable position, which is a pity, actually, One question, Shiri, going back to the thing you mentioned about cricket. So, do you think that's a problem in the whole society? I mean, why do people why do kids start? Are they comparing themselves in this case to the role model, or is it the parents who are putting extra pressure on them? To be that kind of in this case, to be that kind of a cricketer.
I'll answer that question, Manoj, in a moment, but there's something I'd like to contribute to what we were discussing right now. I'm sure, Nick, you would have read this, and Manoj, and I don't know if you've already reached there, but, Tony Robbins mentions a lot about these stimulants and, food as the fuel of your excellence or something like that in his book called The Unlimited Power. And it's a chapter that really changed a lot in my life. And when I combined it with Tony Buzan's books on the power of spiritual intelligence and the power of physical intelligence, a lot of things started opening up for me in the last 6 years, as I would say. And Tony Robbins mentions about what sugar really does to the brain. While the brain requires oxygen and carbohydrates to function at its best, but essentially, I'm not using his words, but my understanding is artificial sugar is one of the biggest things you can do to damage your brain. And he was talking about how if you really study the life patterns of juvenile delinquents, some of the juvenile delinquents, you find they had exceptionally high consumption of sugar.
Yep.
Right from the time they woke up till the time they go off to sleep and things like that. And when I was hearing you speak, Nick, about the people you observed in Brisbane, and especially that person with the Red Bull and a coffee and the cigarette going together, it was just like, I was just wondering, what would he be like in his personal space to himself and to his near and dear ones? He may put on a mask of formality and, customer centricity in front of his customers, but I really wonder what would he be with his, children, and spouse or partner or, his family members. That's one. And, there's a personal example, an interesting experience that I want to share here. When you mentioned about, 5 or 6 cups of coffee, in my first job which I started 21 years ago, it was a very demanding job, traveling job. I was doing my LLM at that time. I was going through a lot of stuff at that time, and I used to love tea. And in our office, we all used to make our own cup of tea, and I used to put 2 tea bags in, not just one, 2 tea bags in. And I would really kind of extract it. I would tie those tea bags around the spoon and extract whatever I could out of it. And once I've had that cup of tea, I'll be like stimulated and, alive for the next 20 minutes. And after 20 minutes, I would start getting very jittery and I would need the next shot. So it was literally like smoking cigarettes. And I realized that, and then once I would come home, I would literally have about, say, 300, 400 ml of tea, which my mother would prepare. And that would keep me awake till 11:30 in the night. And I thought I had all this energy. But I didn't realize what I was doing to my own body. My energy was actually, the graph cumulatively was actually going down. And then what happened is in 2003, I got married. And that very year, the pressure was even more because my travel had picked up. Then I had got the Commonwealth Scholarship to go to King's College London, but my admissions were still on a roll. And a lot of stuff was happening, and I realized that my tea consumption increased. I had become snappy, and I really couldn't concentrate for more than 10 minutes at a time. sorry, my internet kind of went down a bit, so I'm just going to repeat. So I was saying that in 2003, the work pressure increased, the demands were more, the time was less, and I started drinking even more tea. One day I just happened to have a conversation with my Reiki teacher, and I said, I'm experiencing a lot of stress. So he just told me one simple thing. He said, you travel by bus to your office every day, and we had chartered bus, and it used to take us 50 minutes. He said, keep one hand on your thymus gland and the other hand on your solar plexus, and do your Reiki silently while you're traveling in the bus. The one hand that you put on your thymus is going to bring your blood pressure down and increase your immunity. And the one hand on your solar plexus will work on your spleen, and that's again where your immunity is kind of going to go up. And believe you me, 2 weeks I was doing that, and 2 weeks later, I didn't realize the difference or the change that had come in me. But there were colleagues of mine who started coming in asking, Shri, you've been sitting here the whole day. Where's your tea break? I said, really, the whole day, 8 hours have passed? I didn't realize that, my concentration had increased because my relaxation had increased. And that's when I realized that more than stimulants, what we need are relaxants. Not the external relaxants, but if we can relax our internal physiology, if we can relax the hormones that are going haywire and crazy in the thought patterns, then it automatically puts us in a great span of space of concentration. And I got rid of my tea habit. I was a tea addict. I got rid of it, and since then I've not felt the need to go for milk tea or I was never a coffee fan, thankfully, but this tea business kind of stopped back then.
And
in
Shri,
2003.
The word that you just said there resonated with me, because that's exactly what came through. Is, and I think that's worth noticing, that you broke a negative, or you broke an unresourceful habit and created a new habit, and you let go of that, which increased your energy and mental capacity. And I think that's a really great example of how we can break habits and create new ones quite easily.
It's all thanks, and I must mention his name. It's all thanks to my Reiki teacher, Mr. Jairaj, who lives in Delhi. And one other interesting thing which happened now that you intervened and you mentioned it, I remember, I like I shared earlier, I was in London for a year, and there was a retired prison governor who was Kiran Bedi's friend, and I went and met him at her recommendation, and he told me, Shri, why don't you go and meet and attend one of the events at the Brahma Kumari's Global Spiritual University here in London. I was initially a little skeptical, but he said, no, just keep your prejudice aside, just go and meet them. It's not religious or whatever, just go and meet. And I met this lady who was the head of the Brahma Kumaris at that time, Dadi Janki. She was 92 years old, hardly 5 feet, Manoj. And she walks into the room, and it's like incandescent white lamp walking into the room, 1,500 lumens walking into the room. And at 92, she was so settled, so energetic. It was amazing. And it had such a profound impact on me that I forgot myself, and I also automatically stood up in awe and in reverence. And then years later in India, we were at a Life Positive Foundation Expo, and they had invited another Brahma Kumari, someone who's very popular, Sister Shivani, BK Shivani, to come and do the keynote address here. And she mentioned a story of Dadi Janki, which again has very important lessons for all of us, and which is something I've been trying to really work hard on over the last many years. She said, Dadi Janki is so energetic, and this is 2012, so good 6 years. So she's 98 years old at that time. Okay. And she said, many times when we interact with Dadi Janki, we ask her, Dadi means grandmother. Grandmother, what's the secret of your energy? How are you so energetic at all points of time? We are youngsters, hardly 40 years old. We feel so exhausted and tired. What's your secret? She said, my only secret is I try my best not to lose my energy. She said, how? She said, it's like we're all jugs, and the more holes our jugs have, the faster we're going to lose our energy. And she said, what are these holes? These holes are anger, jealousy, insecurity, and all those negative emotions. I try my best to, stay away from them or not allow them to come up and stay inside me for a long period of time. That's essentially my secret of the energy. And that's something I've been consciously practicing, trying to build up over the last many years, which is where I stay away from issues which I know, because I know my personality type. My personality type, Manoj, because now you're going through the Enneagram, I know I'm not a type 8. For type 8s, anger and aggression come very naturally, and they don't get tired by that. They in fact get built
You're
up by that.
definitely not a type 8. You're definitely
Yeah.
not a type 8.
Yeah. So, type 8's best comes out when they're in anger. And whereas anger brings out the worst in me, or, in fact, it damages me and my liver. So I try and stay away from all those issues which will bring out the anger in me. Whereas my classmates from law will tell me 23 years ago, I was like a firebrand. I was like a firecracker on a short fuse at all points of time. So I've stayed away from all this, been doing my mudras and other things. And that's how I'm now begin. And having done a change in my diet, having gone completely vegan, I see a lot of difference. So I don't get tired anymore. I don't lose energy anymore.
You never told me you had done LLM. There's too many secrets coming out now in these talks, huh, Shri?
So you've always treated me with another gender, and I think we've always been on a date, Manoj. So shouldn't women have a bit of secret or a mysterious aura around them?
Bit of mysticism.
Now, what did I teach you the other day? Women are always right, and you're always wrong.
So I mean, of course, I never felt the need to talk about my LLM, but yeah, here you are.
No, it's true. It's true, Shri. And the image that came into my mind, I think what they said to the lady, how do you get your energy? And I try to keep my energy. Most people in life now to achieve these external goals, which or desires, which they believe will make them happy, are taking their body like a tea bag, and they're doing what you did, squeezing every last little bit of energy out of the body, and then waking up the following day and doing exactly the same thing time and time and time again to get to this external success, this recognition, which will make them happy. When in essence, what I've learned over the last couple of years is, you have to just sit and be, or go to the gym, or whatever your form of connecting to yourself is. You have to do that to get that energy, to get that boundless energy. And as we know, because we've both done it, cutting out the negative vibration of animal flesh going into your body, in my experience, is a great way to start.
Now that you mention about that, I don't remember the name of this doctor, but I need to share this here. A few years ago, I was watching an interview, and this doctor was maybe around 93 or 97 years old, and yet amazingly balanced and energy and centered. And he was talking, and this interviewer was asking him, you've lived an amazing life, you've been a doctor, and you look so healthy. What's your one advice for people? He said, and from my experience, if I were to tell you, you take care of your stomach for the first 50 years, your stomach will take care of you for the next 50 years.
Great.
It's essentially about what you put inside your stomach. How you put it, when you put it, in what combination you put it. And that food combination, again, is something I learned from Tony's chapter, in that book, The Unlimited Power. And that's where I changed how I eat fruits. What kind of fruit I eat. And I gave up some of my favorite dishes, because it used to mix fruit with cereals and other stuff. I gave it up, and now I feel much better. But before I forget, I have to come back and answer Manoj's question about that cricket thing that I saw. So Manoj, I see a combination of both the things that you spoke about. So sometimes I do see parents putting a pressure on the children to go and, let's say, ape somebody because they feel it's, I would say, an unconscious, misplaced notion of role modeling. We talk about role modeling in NLP, but this kind of role modeling is an unconscious, misplaced, debilitating, destabilizing way of role modeling, where you role model somebody who's not even your personality type. That's point number one. Point number two, yes, I would see children also kind of unconsciously role modeling and trying to pick it up. It would be someone really wise and mature, someone like I would say, Rahul Dravid, who I consider to be a very wise, mature kind of a person, very conscious as a person, very mindful as a person, in my opinion. I've not interacted with him, but from my distant observations about him, will have the wisdom to differentiate between what is to be really role modeled and what you should kind of stay away from, which is where he was giving that advice that, you know, first discover your own self and find somebody who is more or less like you to role model with, and then go and role model them rather than somebody who's not your type.
So thank you for that, Sharif. Now I would like to go back to where you were, because I think many viewers would be, when they watch this, they'll be very intrigued as I am. I agree with you what you're saying about the food and the energy. Me, myself, last 2 months, switched from coffee to decaf, having a lot of fruit, carbs practically zero, and automatically your energy, I was actually telling my daughter this 3 weeks ago, saying my energy is just going up. But you said about fruits, something about fruits. So you don't mix fruits, or you just eat specific fruits? That's question one. And second question, you were talking about Reiki. So what you were doing, you were putting one hand in your chest and one in your belly. Is that correct?
Right. So let me answer your second question first. So I would put my this is my right hand. I would put it just under my throat here. You know, so here is where the thymus gland is. So if I'm to just bring it down a bit here. So here is where the thymus gland is, right?
Okay.
And that is to stabilize blood pressure, right? And the other hand on my
assuming you have a blood pressure problem.
No, even otherwise, I would say.
All right.
Even otherwise, because, you know, what happens as we grow up is the thymus gland's function begins to kind of come down. You know, it kind of becomes redundant. But it's a very powerful gland. You know, given what Nick had earlier mentioned to adrenals getting affected, etc., and things like that. You know, it's a very powerful gland, so to speak. And if you can activate it, it again kind of stabilizes you a lot. You know, rebuilds your immunity, so to speak. So that's one I did. The second thing I did was I put it on my belly, you know, just below my diaphragm, above my navel. So around the solar plexus area. And that the idea was to stabilize and energize my spleen, which is where, you know, all your antibodies are made, you know, and your immune system gets strengthened from there. You know, your lymphatic system gets kind of influenced there as well. So that's what I did. So I had a 15-minute bus ride. So as soon as I would get in there, and I was lucky that I was from some of the initial stops, I would get a seat to sit on. I just close my eyes, forget who was sitting next to me, what's going around me. Just simply, you know, do this and draw the symbols, and just be there. And I trusted my teacher. You know, I owe a lot of my life to him, and I just did that. And in 2 weeks, I could see that I had changed. I had literally settled down, and as I settled down, I expanded. So that's one.
Wow. Wow.
So far as your previous question about fruits is concerned, as you know, I would strongly recommend you read that chapter, you know, in Tony's book for sure. And he's given a beautiful diagram about, you know, different kinds of food combination between carbohydrates, fats, proteins, you know, and water, and how much water to drink, and also your breathing exercises. He has given a lot of interesting stuff. And just to imagine, you know, that, and by the way, you'll come across a lot of Tony Robbins in your Enneagram course. Has Julia already mentioned his type?
Yeah, she did 3.
3, yeah. So there'll be a lot of discussions on the type 3s, etc. But I was just wondering, you know, I don't know how he did that, but when I look at when that book came out, Unlimited Power, I think back in 1985 or so, more than 35 years ago, and the age he was at that point of time, to see somebody like him at that age and stage, you know, distill and converge all that information to that book is amazing. And for me, the most relevant chapter in there at that point of time, when I first read it in 2014, was this whole chapter on food and fuel for excellence and stuff like that. And there he does speak about fruits. And he says that, you know, fruits are not digested in your stomach, and which is true. They're actually digested in your small intestine. But what happens is when you eat fruits with, let's say, cereal or muesli, or, you know, as a dessert, what happens is this fruit gets kind of stuck in your stomach. Until your proteins and other stuff in your stomach don't get digested, this fruit is not going to go into the small intestine. And as a result, what happens is this fruit there starts decaying. It starts putrefying as the acid tries to work on it. And it starts giving rise to gas, and which is what you experience as burps. Some people may not experience it very strongly, but those who have a very sensitive composition will experience those burps very, you know, strongly. And then it starts building more and more acid inside you. Instead, what he suggested was whatever fruit that you want to take. And he talks about categories of fruit, from semi-acidic to acidic. And he says there are some fruits that don't mix well either. And so you talk about a fruit salad, he says no, that's not how it works. You need to make a fruit salad with fruits that mix well with each other, not different types of fruits. So he says whatever fruit you want to take, you take it empty stomach. And then my experience tells me that depending on the fruit I've taken, it takes anywhere between say half an hour to maybe an hour and a half at times. So if I'm eating a big mango, a big fleshy fibrous mango in the mango season here, it takes me about an hour and a half for me to start feeling hungry again, or start feeling that my stomach is empty even if I don't feel hungry. Stomach being empty and feeling hungry are two different things. I'll come to that in a moment from my experience. So once you eat it empty stomach, it goes into your intestine and you feel that your stomach is empty and you're hungry, is where then you eat your next food and things like that. And he talks about this 8-hour cycle, 8 hours into 3 cycles that he talks about. So he says your ideal food intake, non-fruit intake time should be between 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. Between 8 p.m. to 4 a.m., your body is in the process of repair and reset and things like that. And from 4 a.m. to 12 p.m., it's primarily in the detox phase. So during that time, you can have a lot of water, fruits, etc. That will not intervene because it doesn't draw out. Fruits to get digested do not draw out a lot of energy from your body. So if you can have your breakfast, say your proper meal-based breakfast around from 12 p.m. onwards, then it's good. Before that, you have your fruits or whatever, and that's good enough to go. I've been trying to do that, but it will take me some time to reach there because my travel and training schedules are such that especially when I'm traveling, 12 p.m. is right in the middle of my session. And my lunch timings are usually between 1:30 or so. And when I'm training, I feel very hungry. So I would rather eat a full meal and then go into my session. Because when I get really hungry, I begin to shake. I begin to shiver. My sugar goes down. So I want to avoid that. But it's a very interesting chapter, and I would recommend that you read it. So, there was
Which chapter is it? Do you know? You got the book?
Let me see if I have that book.
Still, right?
Let me see if I have that book here. Just give me a moment.
No, it's okay. Later you can.
I'll message the name of the chapter in the book in a WhatsApp group. But there used to be my favorite dish, a couple of my favorite dishes. So from South India, there's a steamed rice dish where you powder you powder the rice and you put it in a funnel like tube kind of a structure. You steam it with coconut layers in between, and then you take it out. And one of the ways you eat it is with bananas, and it's awesome. And there's another dish called upma made out of raw semolina wheat, and again one of the ways you can enjoy it is with bananas. And these were two of my favorite dishes. But then as I learned this, that's when I started becoming mindful of the fact, and I started getting an answer as to why did I get these burps, acidic burps, each time I had it. Whereas for years I was ignoring it. So I then broke that pattern and I said, let me do one thing. Let me try and eat this putta, that steamed rice stuff that I was talking about, or that upma, without these bananas, and see what happens. The moment I did that, the burping stopped.
Interesting.
Wow.
So now what I do is...
Nick, you read the book, I'm guessing, right?
I haven't actually read that book, but I've done enough research around what the people that he's partnered with and stuff like that. And I mean, my greatest energy when I think back on my greatest energy is after I did UPW and I ate fruit. I only ate fruit until 12 o'clock midday, and then I would eat vegetables after that. No grains. It was a very clean. It was living food. You just ate live food. And my energy, I think I was 32 or 33, and my energy went through the roof. I was like a 12-year-old.
In fact, and that's my goal as well, Manoj. So I've still a little bit of treatment left in my stomach. So once that's done and I get a go-ahead from my doctor, that's the food pattern I'm going to go into. No grains. And in fact, Tony says it very clearly that the only food the humans need are fruits, salads, and sprouts. Not even grains.
Sprouts are very important. And it's interesting. Recently, just summarize this quickly. So I've been having this, obviously, exhaustion, which is why I'm watching these documentaries. And I went to a naturopath, and she said, "Oh, you're probably low on B vitamins because I'm vegan." She said, "You're probably low on B vitamins because the first thing stress strips from the body is B vitamins. You know, that's the first thing the body does." And I thought about it straight for about 2 or 3 days, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to just eat some meat just to see if that's true. And in Australia, we have an abundance of kangaroos, and the reason I eat kangaroo is because, not that I eat it now, but the reason I chose kangaroo is because I know it's not farmed. There's no antibodies. There's no hormones. They shoot it in the wild, and it's as clean as it can get. Anyway, I ate this kangaroo. This is on Saturday, and I ate this kangaroo, and my energy did go up slightly during the day, I have to say. And I woke up the next morning and I was feeling more energetic. Yeah, I bought some more on Saturday and I ate it, and I was like, I would rather, which I have done, I would rather take a B multi-complex than sense the energy of that animal in my body. So it was, and I don't know if that's, you know, going back to the habit thing, I don't know if that's because I've done it for so many years. The body is no longer needs that. But it's true what he says, because, you know, I remember watching a documentary on Tony Robbins, and he was talking about like vegan eating plant-based, right? And I can't remember where it was, but it was in some redneck place in the States. And this guy stood up and he was like, you know, where am I going to get my protein from? You know, I need red meat, I need a steak. And he turned around, and I always remember this analogy because I thought of it the other day when I was eating this kangaroo. And he said, "Sir, you know, if we look at a gorilla, right? A gorilla is one of the strongest, most physically empowered beings on the planet. And it eats vegetables, greens, and fruits, you know, and protein." And I started researching a bit more. It's just at the weekend, looking at, okay, where can I get my protein? And sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, all these, yes, you have to eat a lot more of them, right? But they essentially can have the same amount of protein as a piece of animal flesh can. So, but it's true. It's very true what he says. It's you eat live food, and the body just loves it. I think it's the mitochondria. I don't know, in some way, shape, or form, but we could talk about that longer.
It's interesting you mention it, you know, because some years ago, I did a research and I did some experiment on this as well. So, you know, we were comparing how much protein do you get per unit weight from different sources of food.
Yeah.
So, you know, so they said that you get about, I think, 37% of protein from soybean.
Yeah.
But maybe about 12 or so percent from, you know, 100 grams of chicken or something. But if you take spirulina, you know, organic spirulina, you get up to, I think, 65 or 73% of it is pure proteins.
Is it really? Wow. Okay, I didn't know that.
And in fact, NASA did an experiment on spirulina for their astronauts, and what they found is, because they were trying to figure out what kind of food can we send with our, you know, astronauts into the space lab, into the ISS, which would kind of be light on weight yet provide them with the full spectrum of nutrition. And what they found was 1 kilogram of spirulina, which is a blue-green algae, you know, 1 kilogram of blue-green algae spirulina in capsule form or whatever is equivalent to 1,000 kilograms of fruits and vegetables. Wow. In terms of the nutrition you get from there.
Incredible.
And you know, the WHO has done a detailed study in terms of all the macro and micronutrients you get from spirulina, as well as a mushroom called Ganoderma lucidum. You know, between these two, you are on a complete diet. You have all your macro and micronutrients obtained from these two stuff.
Well, that's exactly what I'm going to have when we finish this call now, because I've got a big tub of spirulina, and I was like, oh, I need to have some of that.
I don't even know how to spell that, but anyway, I'll research into it. Just before we finish, I've been told that soya, yeah, it's a great protein source, yet it has a lot of estrogen. So it's great for women, but men shouldn't have it. Is that true? from
have-
your research?
Look, you have
I
to
don't
do
know.
your own research. I've done my own research on it. It's very high in estrogen. The trouble you have with soybeans, my opinion, when you do your research, is it's very deforestation. Most forests are chopped down to grow soybean, because soybean also goes into animal feed, right? So it's one of the
Pig feed.
yeah, it's big feed. So it's not only for human consumption; it's generally GMO modified. So if you do buy soy and you even consider it bioorganic, and know where you're buying it from, because it's full of so much, not just estrogen, but so many different additives and chemicals and hormones. So if you do look into it, that would be my suggestion.
And to add to that, Manoj, it's a new learning for me, and thanks for that confirmation, Nick, about the estrogen part. But two things I had learned about soya is that one, in India, they don't eat soya bean the way it is supposed to be eaten. In the sense,
Okay.
in Thailand and in Southeast Asia, they eat it in a fermented form. So in a fermented form is where it is easy for the human body to digest it. Otherwise, it gives you a lot of gas and acidity for sure. And the second thing, again, I don't know how sure it is, but I've heard a lot of people say that if you eat it, it's not good for your thyroid gland. And both my wife and I, we have thyroid issues. So again, for that reason, we kind of didn't go there. But before we sign off, I must share this, and I'll share the link on our WhatsApp group. When we are talking about animal food and all that stuff earlier, I remember this gentleman in India. His name is Daryl D'Souza. He lives in Goa, and his is an amazing journey of how from being chronically ill all the time, how he cured himself. And if you look at his mug shots from the time he was 16 years old or 18 years old as a college student to the time he was 24 or 30, when he looked 60 years old because he was that unwell, to now when you look at him at 50 years old, guess what? His 50-year-old mugshot is the same as his 18-year-old mugshot.
Wow.
He has reversed aging simply by changing his diet and practicing acupressure. So I'll send a link of his TED talk that he gave, and he wrote a book called "Heal Yourself or Become Extinct." Okay, amazing guy. I'll send that link.
Love it. All right, guys, thank you so much again. Awesome.
I think we guys should
Good.
do this. It's so much of learning and synergies. We must do it every
fun.
month.
And fun. Every
Yeah,
month
and fun,
I'm in.
Yeah.
So you want to I'll just end this recording.